Okay, hello, welcome back to the channel. Probably a very quick one. I wanted to have another look at what I'd done for some of this project in the last uh, few weeks. Well, it's only been 2 weeks, sorry, but I guess my last video was last week, I suppose. Um, and things have changed quite a lot. I'm not sure if my last video was my old landscape. I've redone it since then. It's still quite melty in the background, like you can see, but I was very impressed with how these splines have worked for the situation that I was in. So mostly I'm going to be using them to um, to fill out the environment more often than what I've done previously. I set up this quick spline system to allow me just to get these edges done. I'll do one on the stream if I can find one. Yeah, like some of that's pretty good. So anywhere there's an edge like that, you can pretty much just grab your spline tool and do it. So let's just have a look. Spline tool made my environment go strange. Okay, that's weird. I will show you what I've done for the spline tool in a minute, but when I reach a certain length, it's going to input the mesh. So once I've got that mesh visible, I'm going to move this around until it intersects with the floor. And then I'm not too bothered about where exactly it's falling at the moment. I just want to move the spline until I've got enough length for what I want to do with it. And also, I'm not too bothered if the end doesn't sit correctly the within the space of what I want to do with it, because I'm going to have other meshes available to myself to cover up that with like just a big mesh that's like, I don't know, rocks that are slightly in a different direction. I just cap that with a mesh if it's visible. And now that I've placed these where I want them, I can sort of just start saying, all right, well, I want that over there. Maybe there needs to be another point between these two to allow me to do what I want. So I'm just alt dragging out of that. So I'll move that until I reach the location that I kind of want it to be in. Might just bring that so it goes straight down. And then bring this one forward because it's intersecting with the ground too much. Bearing in mind also that these sections are going to have textures on them that are going to make the seam between these two bits look a lot less as well. So if right now while I'm placing it, it doesn't look like it's blending very well or it's intersecting weirdly, then that's going to be smoothed out with either other meshes or just landscape textures in general will smooth it out. I probably need an even smaller piece of this. What I can do is drag this spline tool out again, go to the meshes. They're my spline meshes, but I can still get some discs. Grab one of those, put that on the spline instead. And for this little edge here, I can, so these aren't particularly built to be arrayed like this, but yeah, so it doesn't like increasing the scale. So I probably need to replace this mesh at a later date. But I can cover that little ridge with some specific little spikes. And whether that's going to look natural or not, I don't know. And then what I've also done is, for close to the camera, I've sort of laid some out in S shape there, and I've gone around the edges here, and there's just a lot of places that I can do this. That looks like a really good example where I can just go back, get the spline tool, and because I know it's going to be a detailed mesh later on, it's just going to hopefully look pretty good. So let's have a look. Keep missing it. So again, I'm not that bothered about where I'm placing this, just vaguely in the right location to start with. And that looks really big. So again, maybe I should find a smaller mesh and and use that instead. But this is just kind of what I do with this tool. It's really easy to build. There's a tutorial to follow. But I've made splines like 100 times for every project that I've been on. Personal project, professional projects, I make spline tools all the time to lay out exactly what I'm doing here. Stuff like this. Um, but my memory is shocking. So every single time I watch the same tutorial just to make sure that I get it right. And the first time I made it, it didn't turn out too well, and then now they turn out pretty good. But I still have to watch that 20-minute tutorial to get to the position where I know what I'm doing. So, and it's over there. I'll just finish doing this one, and then I'll explain uh, what I do with it. Actually, it's quite a long one. Oopsie. It's quite a long spline, so you can always also break them up into multiple, because sometimes you'll have a small edge that's fading into a much larger edge, and that's not always so it doesn't always work out. Okay, so like right now, I'm pretty much at my limit. That if I moved this up, then I would start seeing a gap underneath, which isn't ideally what I want. So I think I can get away with it here though, and I'll show an example of where I fixed that. I'm not sure whether these can be turned into solid meshes not or anything like that, because then you could double click them and change them out to whatever reference you want. Yeah, so I'll have that fade back into the mountain there while I just finish off this last little one. And as I say, other meshes might go over the top of this. So the way that it looks right now really doesn't matter. It's still the block out phase. There you go. So I've just put that there, and it works pretty well. So maybe instead of doing that curve like that, I'll go back in. In fact, I did just double click it and it worked. Can I do that? I think I can just change that out. Let's find out. Nope, nope, doesn't work. But anyway, so like in this scenario here, if it's too wiggly for me to work with, so I'll delete them as they go along, and then I would just make that fade in like that, grab a new one instead, and keep doing this. I appreciate that me doing it like 5 times is probably boring for a little quick video, but this is just me working. So um, that's what this video is. And so now I can fade that in like that. And if I start moving this around, it's probably going to get rid of that one because the length, because I've currently got it based on the length, which I will get into. So let's sort this out. Final time. Okay, so there we go. That's a little bit better than how it was. I'm gonna leave it. So the actual tool, probably pretty messy. I've not looked into it. Yeah, so it's it's messy-ish. Put the viewport back there, and so you just place a spline into your components, and then I'm getting the mesh bounds because if I get the mesh bounds, then whichever object I input, you want to use double the box extent. So times that by 2, and then put that in as an automated section length. So it's going to get the start and end of a mesh, which means that I can't do custom distances. You could add more to this, but it messes around with the tangents of the mesh. And as the other tutorial, if you Google splines in Unreal, there's a tutorial with pipes that someone's got, and it's the first tutorial that you see, and it goes through all this stuff. It took me ages to understand it as far as blueprints go, but I understand it now, and if you keep doing it, then you probably will too. You need to set things like the forward vector, and not all meshes are the same, so I've set that as a parameter. There it is, and pretty much you set the start and end, and that's all it is. So in a situation where there's little ones like that, and then there's big ones next to it like that, and medium-sized ones to sort of fill out the environment, which is going to help because they're all going to be different meshes in the end. And what I'm gonna do in the end is probably either alternate the mesh so that I get more room out of what it is, so like sculpt 2 variations of each mesh, or I would do something like flip it so that it makes it look longer, or or maybe you just won't notice in the end, and I'll make it just as big as possible and cover it up with meshes. But that's sort of what I've done. So I can go to my cameras, and I know that I can see it from this angle without any issues. I can see things from this angle without any issues, and then I've got freedom. I know that early on I've got freedom to do shots that kind of come in from this angle because I know that pretty much all of this is going to be automatically finished uh, based on re-importing a few meshes. And then my next step is going to be the landscape materials. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do them next. This is Epic's automated water. I'm not sure if that's cheating to use the automated water system, but it's pretty good, and so I've ended up using it. Um, and I had to scale this down so that the landscape actually finishes really soon. So I'm going to have to come up with some solution, some kind of mesh, maybe another landscape, but you can place multiple landscapes. Maybe I'll place one that's out in the distance. If anyone has suggestions for how to make this fade out into an environment, otherwise all my camera shots are going to have to be like pretty stingy. Or I could just completely, cover the edges with some kind of hill, and then behind that have a low res sort of plain landscape type thing. But I'm pretty much making that up as I go. This is apparently broken at some point, so I've got to fix that. But okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.